Hello everyone. I'm starting a lecture series on digital signal processing. In today's video lecture, we are going to study about the introduction to digital signal processing. What is a signal? It is a function of one of four variables which conveys information on the nature of the phenomenon, physical phenomenon. The function may depend upon one or more variables. So when the function depends upon one variable, we call it one-dimensional, for example speech signal. And if the function depends upon two or more variables, then we call that signal as multidimensional. For example, image, which is a two-dimensional signal. Next, what is a system? System is defined as an entity that manipulates one or more signals to accomplish a function, thereby yielding new signals. There are different types of signals. We can classify the signals into basically two types. One is analog signals, another is digital signals. Under analog signal, we have continuous and discrete time signals. And discrete time signal, when it is passed through an A to D converter, that is analog to digital converter, we get digital signal. Now, what is the difference between continuous and discrete time signal? So, you can see from this that all continuous signals are analog, but all analog signals are not continuous. Continuous signal is one which varies continuously with respect to time. Let us say I am taking the x-axis as time and y-axis is the amplitude of the signal or the magnitude of the signal. Then the amplitude of the signal varies continuously with respect to time. We call it as a continuous signal. Now, which signal is called a discrete time signal? The amplitude is continuous in nature, but the time axis has been discretized. That means sampled. Then in that case, such signal we call it as discrete time signal. Such discrete time signals are passed through A to D converter to get digital signal. What is digital signal? Digital signal is one wherein both the time as well as the amplitude are discretized. That means both are sampled. Such signals we call them as digital signals. But in normal day-to-day life, we make use of discrete and digital whatever way we want. Now, why do we have to go for signals? Why we have to study signals? We know that the whole world is driven by information and signals carry information. So, why processing of signals is required? Now, we know that signals carry information, everything is fine. But why do we need to process the signals? Why processing? Processing is concerned with mathematical representation of the signal and its algorithm operations carried out to obtain the signal in a more desirable form. So, what you are doing? You are mathematically representing the signal, and then you are applying operations and algorithms on the signal so that you can get the signal in a more desirable form. Now, more desirable form means what? It means you can improve the quality of the signal by processing, can extract the useful information that is being carried by the signal. For example, we make use of multiplexers, demultiplexers, noise filters, etc. The method of extraction, it depends upon the type of signal and nature of information carried by the signal. Now, what are the different methods of signal processing? As I told you, signal processing methods, it depends upon what type of signal is and what type of information is carried by the signal. So, based on the type of signal, we have analog, digital and mixed signal processing. So analog signal processing deals with signals which are analog in nature. Digital signal processing deals with signals that are digital, and mixed signal processing means the signals that are dealt are both analog and digital. Now, what are the advantages? What are the advantages of using analog signal processing, or what are the advantages of using analog signals? Low cost, simplicity in some applications, wide bandwidth, low signal levels, infinite effective sampling rate and infinite resolution in amplitude is obtained by using analog signals. So, no quantization noise, no aliasing or reconstruction issues will be there. Now, why not analog signal processing? Why do we have to go for why did we go for digital signals and all when already analog signals, we know that in real time all the signals are analog in nature? Then why we go for digital? Why not analog signal processing? Or what are the disadvantages of analog signal processing? These are sensitive to environmental changes, aging, that means as time goes on the circuits are going to get affected. Whatever designs you would have done, the circuits you would have built, they would have changed. Uncertain performance in production units, variation in performance of units, cost of the system will be high, and scalability. What does this mean? This means that analog circuits are affected by temperature, they are also affected by aging. For example, if I make use of a 1 kilo ohm resistor in my design and I have built a circuit wherein I have used 1 kilo ohm resistor, then after 10 years the same resistor, when I check its value, it will show 1.1 kilo ohms. So obviously the performance will differ. So if we have to overcome the disadvantages of analog signal processing, that's why we go for digital signal processing. You can see in this particular slide that a person is speaking. So the speech signal carries the information of what the person is speaking. So that speech signal is received by the ear, and through the ear it passes through to our brain. Now this signal is speech signal is analog in nature. That analog signal is now given to the brain. Now this is acting like an analog computer. It processes the speech signal, and then depending upon what the signal is or what the person is speaking, our brain, that is the computer, is going to understand. It processes and understands what the person is speaking. Similarly, the person speaks in the microphone. The signal, that is the speech signal, is now, the electrical signal is passed through an A to D converter. Now this A to D converter, that is analog to digital converter, it converts the analog speech signal into digital signal, and that digital signal is given as input to the digital signal processor, which is the digital computer, and the output of the digital signal processor is once again a digital signal, and this digital signal processor is going to perform operations on the signal which has been given as the input, and it generates the digital signal as output. Now this digital signal is given as input to DAC, that is digital to analog converter, which produces analog output. This part is the digital signal processing. Digital signal processing is done in digital signal processor. So basically, what is DSP? DSP is a technique of performing mathematical operations on the signals represented as sequence of samples in digital domain. The processing steps include addition, subtraction, multiplication, recalling past signals through delay. Thus, we can see here that you have a digital signal processor, and this digital signal processor, it is connected to memory, A to D converter, DAC, that is D to A converter, and input output ports. What are the applications, or in general, where the digital signal processors are used, where you find them in day-to-day life? Hi-fi equipments, toys, video phones, modems, phone systems, 3D graphics, image processing, and so on. So nowadays, you don't have any electronic equipment which doesn't have a digital signal processor. Now, why do we go for digital signal processor? Or in other words, what are the advantages? It is immune to environmental noise. The output is predictable, cost effective, no delay, exact linear phase is obtained, handles more than one signal at a time, low frequency processing is not a problem, whereas in analog, low frequency means we will have to use big inductors. Here no inductors are used. Digital signal processing is accurate. Multi-rate processing can be done, that is more number of sampling frequencies can be used, or varying number of sampling frequencies can be used. Some special functions are best implemented digitally. Example, adaptive filters, linear phase filters, etc. The digital signal processors are programmable. You can see that you can use same hardware, different softwares can be put so that different applications or many tasks can be performed by a single hardware. And you can upgrade, develop a new code, and it is very flexible. Whereas in analog signals, if you have to upgrade, then in that means a new design has to be done, and then a new circuit has to be built. Next, repeatability. That means like we can play a CD on a CD player and listen to the same music with the same quality. If we make use of digital signal processor, it is perfectly reproducible. So nearly identical performance, and performance is not affected by tolerance. No drift in performance due to temperature or aging, as I have already told you, and guaranteed accuracy. Every time you have advantage, you have disadvantages also. So what are the disadvantages of using a digital signal processor? Increased complexity. Frequency range is limited due to sample and hold circuit and analog to digital converter. And when the sampling frequency is greater than or equal to 2 FM, this condition has to be met for no aliasing to occur. Now, as the sampling frequency increases, the resolution of A to D converter decreases. What do you mean by that? If 1 GHz sampling frequency is used, then the resolution of A to D converter is 6 bits. So Fs is equal to 1 GHz, it means Fm is equal to 0.5 GHz. Now when 10 MHz Fs is used, then the A to D converter has 12 to 16 bit resolution. Then FM, that is the message signal frequency, is 5 MHz. So you can see that when the sampling frequency is 10 MHz, the A to D converter has a bit resolution of 12 to 16. Whereas when the value of Fs has increased to 1 GHz, or the message signal frequency is 0.5 GHz, that means it has increased from 5 MHz to 0.5 GHz, then in that case the A to D converter resolution is 6 bit. That means the number of bits has reduced. So there is a limitation on highest frequency used. Now what is analog's place in digital signal processor? Now most transducers are analog by nature. For example, microphones, speakers, etc. Analog circuits are required to pre-process low-level signals before ADC, that is analog to digital converter. Analog filters may be required to limit the bandwidth of the signals. For example, anti-alias filters are used before ADC and reconstruction filters are used after DAC. Analog circuits may be required to drive output transducers. That means we may need to use power amplifiers to enable a DAC to drive a speaker. Here you can see the digital signal processing system as a whole. We have an anti-aliasing filter, ADC, that is A to D converter, digital signal processor, D to A converter, that is digital to analog converter, reconstruction filter. And A to D converter has sample and hold circuit and quantizer. Now what do you mean by anti-aliasing filter? Anti-aliasing filter is a low pass filter. So analog low pass filter used to band limit the input analog signal to required frequency range and prevent frequency components beyond the range from appearing as aliases in the sampled spectrum of the input signal. Why this is required? Because the sampling frequency Fs is greater than or equal to 2 FM, that is twice the message signal frequency, or the message signal frequency, that is the input frequency, should be less than or equal to Fs by 2. That means if input frequency is limited to half of the sampling frequency Fs. Otherwise what will happen? High frequency contents sampled with inadequate sampling rate generate low frequency aliasing noise. That's why to remove the high frequency components we are using anti-aliasing filter. Next block is A to D converter, that is analog to digital converter. So this analog to digital converter, as I told you, it has sample and hold circuit and a quantizer. So what is the sample and hold circuit? Sample and hold circuit, it presents the samples of the input signal at the rate determined by the system design requirements to the input of the quantizer. It holds these samples at constant levels irrespective of variations in the input signal in the interval between the sampling instants. You can see here that you have given an input signal to the sample and hold circuit. So sample and hold circuit holds the value of the signal at one particular level even though the input signal is varying. So these samples are held at constant levels even though there is variation in the input signal between the sampling instants. And what does the quantizer do? It maps the value of the analog input sample to its equivalent digital representation and then feeds it to the digital signal processor. So what does the quantizer do? It maps or it converts the output of the sample and hold. Each level it is going to convert it into a binary or digital form, and then that input, that digital input, is fed to the digital signal processor. Now this digital signal processor, as I already told you, it is going to perform operations on the input digital signal and produce another digital signal as the output. So here you can see what are the different types of outputs obtained. Now this is a continuous signal, it has been magnified. So you can see continuous signal here. Next, sampled signal. You can see samples are taken at t equal to 0, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4. So samples are taken at regular intervals of time. Now sampled data signal, that means after the sample and hold circuit, this is the output what we get. So for a particular interval of time, you can see that even though the input is changing, the sample and hold circuit output remains constant. Now these values are converted to digital signals, that is digital representation, that is the quantized signals. And then once you give the digital signal to the DAC output, the DAC output is in staircase format. The digital signal processor, it is application specific, it performs one function more accurately, faster, it is less expensive. Digital filters, FFT chips, etc. can be programmed using the digital signal processor. If it is application specific, then in that particular case, that particular processor will perform the function for which it has been programmed. But the digital signal processors can be general purpose as well. In that case, that such processors can be programmed for different applications. So they have shorter design cycle time, performs multiplication and accumulator operations at greater speed, pipeline of data flow, parallelism in operation. They have high speed and throughput. Now, what are the factors to choose the digital signal processor? So we need to check about the speed of the processor, throughput, that is how fast the output is obtained, arithmetic capability, precision, size, cost and power consumption. After the digital signal processor is going to perform processing operations, when we get the output, we are going to give the digital signal to the DAC, that is digital to analog converter. Now the digital to analog converter, it converts the digital signal to analog signal, and a staircase output is generated as shown in this particular figure. Now, as I had shown you in the block diagram, after the DAC we have a reconstruction filter. What does this reconstruction filter do? The DAC output is in staircase form in this way. It is not smooth curve, or it is not smooth continuous in nature. So the reconstruction filter, it is an analog low pass filter, and it converts the staircase form of output from the DAC into smooth continuous waveform. So now we will study what is sampling theorem. Analog signals are continuous time signals. They can exist as voltage or current waveforms, or if you represent mathematically, we can write it as some V of t is equal to sine 2 pi ft. Now modern systems must convert this continuous time signal into discrete signals to be compatible with digital storage, digital transmission and digital signal processing. So how this is done? These continuous signals are sampled. Now what do you mean by sampling? Sampling is the process in which continuous time signals are converted into discrete digital samples. Sampling is usually performed at a constant frequency or sampling rate. What is sampling? Sampling is the process whereby an analog signal is converted into a series of impulses of size equal to amplitude of the signal at regularly spaced instants of time. That means the analog signal is converted into samples or impulses. And how are you going to get the impulses? At regular intervals of time, you are going to take the value of the signal at that particular instant. Now, what do you mean by sample period? The time between samples is known as sample period, and it is expressed in seconds. And what is sampling frequency? Fs. Sampling frequency is 1 by the sampling time. That is reciprocal of the sampling period. It is the number of samples taken per second of the signal, and it is expressed as hertz or units of samples per second. A sampling time signal must not contain components at frequencies above half the sampling rate. When Fs is the sampling frequency and Fm is the frequency of the message signal or the signal carrying the information, then the sampling frequency Fs should be greater than or equal to 2 Fm, or Fm should be less than or equal to Fs by 2. Thus, when Fs is equal to 2 Fm or Fm is equal to Fs by 2, we call that as the Nyquist frequency. The highest frequency which can be accurately represented is half of the sampling rate. High frequency contents of the signal are filtered, thus sacrificing to avoid violation of the sampling theorem, or else the sampling rate must be increased. So what do you mean by the sampling theorem? The sampling frequency must be high enough to avoid aliasing or mixing of the high frequency and low frequency components of the signal. Aliasing is the phenomenon due to which high frequency signal, when sampled using low sampling rate, becomes low frequency signal that may interfere with the signal of interest. Thus, to avoid aliasing, we have to follow or satisfy Fs greater than or equal to 2 Fm. Here we can see that if higher sampling rates are used, then reconstruction of the signals is more accurate rather than while using low sampling rates. So here 64 samples per cycle have been used, 32, 16, and here 8 samples per cycle have been used. So you can see that the sine wave which need to be reconstructed, if the number of samples per cycle is very less, you can see that we cannot reconstruct back the original signal properly. These are some of the examples. Here the sampling frequency is half the wave frequency, or fs is equal to half fm. You can see here that all the sample values have occurred on the x-axis, and reconstruction is nothing but joining these samples, and we are in no way nearer to the original signal. Whereas here, when the sampling frequency is 1/3 of the wave frequency, you can see instead of sine wave, triangular waveform has been reconstructed back. Sampling frequency is 2/3 of the wave frequency, still it is not accurate. Sampling frequency is equal to the wave frequency. Sampling frequency is 2 times the wave frequency. You can see how exactly the reconstruction has taken place. So these large blocks of purple are the samples which have been taken, and when you join the samples, you are able to reconstruct back and get back the original signal. After sampling the analog signal, the result obtained is nothing but a sequence representing the signal samples, and the sequence, it depends upon the signal being sampled. Thus, we are giving the input signal x of t, which we represent it as a cos 2 pi ft, or 2 pi f is represented by capital omega here. So x of t is equal to a cos omega t, and this cosine signal is now passed through a switch. You have a switch here, and this switch is closed every t intervals of time. That means integral multiples of capital T. That means at regular intervals of time, the switch is being closed, and then immediately it opens. The instant the switch closes, you can see the output is equal to the input. But as soon as the switch opens, the output will be 0. So what does this mean? Because it is a cosine signal, when it is passed through the switch, let us say now at t is equal to 0, the switch has been closed. So this is the amplitude of the signal. At t equal to 0, we get an impulse of amplitude 1. Next, at t is equal to 1, let us say, that means at t the switch is closed. So at that instant, whatever is the amplitude, we are going to get t. Next, at 2t, again the switch is closed. So this is the impulse with this much amplitude we are going to get. So like this it continues. Only when the switch is closed, at that instant, what is the amplitude of the input signal, you're going to get at the output, and later you're going to get 0. Once again, when the switch closes, whatever is the amplitude you're going to get, and again the signal is 0. So you can see here that you are going to get impulse, a train of impulses you are going to get with different amplitudes, the amplitudes being equal to the amplitude of the original signal at the instant the switch has been closed. We will represent this output as a cos 2 pi f, and instead of t, small t, we are replacing it with nt. Thus a cos 2 pi f was taken as capital omega into nt. A cos capital omega into t is written as small omega, or a cos 2 pi f n. Capital T can be written as 1 by fs. So we have a cos 2 pi f n by fs, or a cos omega n, where omega is capital omega into t, or it can be written as 2 pi f by fs. And the small omega is the digital frequency, it is in radians. Capital omega is the analog frequency, it is in radians per second. And t is the sampling time interval. Fs is 1 by t, that is the sampling frequency. Now from the sampling theorem, we know that Fs is greater than or equal to 2fm, or fm is fs by 2. Then when we substitute, omega is equal to 2 pi fm by fs, and in place of fm we replace it with fs by 2. 2 pi fm by fs, we will write it as 2 pi by fs into fm, we are writing it as fs by 2. We got pi. So the range of omega is between 0 to pi. The magnitude is between 0 to pi, or if I take omega, it is minus pi to pi, ranges from minus pi to pi, or we can also take omega ranging from 0 to 2 pi. In signals and systems, we have seen how the time domain signal is being converted to frequency domain. Why basically we convert a time domain signal to frequency domain? Because the processing steps or the manipulations or the operations performed on the signals is easier in frequency domain compared to time domain. That is the reason why we convert the time domain signals to frequency domain, so that processing is easier. If we have a continuous periodic signal in the time domain, then Fourier series need to be performed and the output obtained is discrete non-periodic signal. Next, if we have a continuous non-periodic signal in the time domain, we apply Fourier transform to get continuous non-periodic signal in the frequency domain. Discrete periodic signal in the time domain, we apply DTFS, that is discrete time Fourier series, and discrete periodic signal is obtained in the frequency domain. Now in the time domain, when the signal is discrete non-periodic, we apply DTFT, that is discrete time Fourier transform, and we get continuous periodic signal in the frequency domain. In the time domain, the signals can be continuous periodic or discrete periodic. Similarly, they can be continuous non-periodic or discrete non-periodic. Then in the frequency domain, if the signal is continuous periodic, we are using Fourier series and we get discrete non-periodic signal. Whereas if the signal is continuous non-periodic, we apply Fourier transform to get continuous non-periodic signal. Now in the time domain, when the signal is discrete periodic, then DTFS is applied so that we get discrete periodic signal in the frequency domain. And if the input signal is discrete non-periodic in the time domain, then DTFT, that is discrete time Fourier transform, is applied to get continuous periodic signal in the frequency domain. We have seen that the input is a discrete non-periodic signal, then you apply DTFT to get continuous periodic signal in the frequency domain. X of n, which is discrete signal in the time domain, we apply DTFT, that is discrete time Fourier transform, and we get continuous periodic signal in the frequency domain. That means we get x of e to the power of j omega. In short, we write it as x of omega, which is equal to summation of x of n e to the power of minus j omega n. Now this is a continuous periodic signal in the frequency domain. Now this continuous periodic signal, we cannot apply it as input to the digital signal processor because this is continuous in nature. So what we have to do? We have to convert this continuous signal into digital signal. So for that, we perform sampling and quantization. So when sampling and quantization are performed, at regular intervals, we are going to take the samples in such a way that omega is equal to 2 pi k by n. So for example, we have a signal like this. So we are taking the samples at regular intervals so that we get the samples, and the spacing between any two samples is going to be 2 pi by n. So in one cycle, n samples we are going to take, and one cycle omega ranges from 0 to 2 pi. Therefore, spacing between any two samples will be 2 pi by n. And if we need to find out where the sample is, we substitute omega is equal to 2 pi k by n, where k will range from 0 to n minus 1. So when k equal to 0, you get this first sample. K equal to 1, at omega is equal to 2 pi by n, you are going to get this sample. Next, at k equal to 2, that means 4 pi by n. When omega is equal to 4 pi by n, at that time you are going to get this particular sample. Like that it goes on. So we sample and quantize the signal, and from continuous periodic signal we get discrete signal. And this discrete signal, whatever we get, it is once again periodic. So we take the values from 0 to n minus 1, and what we get is the digital non-periodic signal. When I said omega is equal to 2 pi k by n, here in place of omega, if I substitute 2 pi k by n, I will get the digital signal. Now instead of going through all these steps, that means applying DTFT, then performing sampling and quantization, we can directly apply DFT, that is discrete Fourier transform. So when we apply discrete Fourier transform on discrete signal in time domain, then we get digital signal in the frequency domain. Now the discrete time domain sequence x of n, it is converted to equivalent frequency domain representation to perform frequency analysis using DTFT. But the signal obtained is continuous function of frequency, and it is not a convenient representation as it cannot be processed by digital system. Therefore, the DFT of the sequence x of n, this is a finite duration sequence in frequency domain, and it is denoted by x of k. Now this is obtained by sampling one period of DTFT x of omega, and the sampling is performed at n equally spaced points. As I had explained you, omega is equal to 2 pi k by n, k ranging from 0 to n minus 1. If I apply DFT directly, we can get x of k from x of n. So the formula of DTFT and DFT are, formula of DTFT is x of omega is equal to summation n is equal to minus infinity to infinity x of n e to the power of minus j omega n, omega ranging from 0 to 2 pi, but omega is substituted with 2 pi k by n, then we get the DFT formula. So it is summation. And one more thing we have to remember, instead of periodic signal we are taking just one cycle, that is samples, n number of samples we are taking. So summation n is equal to 0 to n minus 1 x of n e to the power of minus j 2 pi k n by n, k ranging from 0 to n minus 1. Now if we have to reconstruct back the time domain signal x of n, we perform IDFT, that is inverse discrete Fourier transform, and the formula is 1 by n summation k equal to 0 to n minus 1 x of k e to the power of j 2 pi k n by capital N, and small n ranging from 0 to n minus 1. Anyway, we are going to study in detail DFT further classes. We are going to remember what all we studied in signals and systems, some basic important points. What is linearity? Weighted superposition of inputs produce weighted superposition of outputs. So when x1 of n passes through the system, we get y1 of n. x2 of n passes through the system, we get, let us say, y2 of n. Then weighted superposition of the inputs, that is some weights a and b are being multiplied to the inputs and they are added. So a x1 of n plus b x2 of n, pass it through the same system, we get a y1 of n plus b y2 of n, that is weighted superposition of outputs are obtained. Then in such a case this system is linear. Next, time invariance system. What do you mean by time invariance? It does not vary with time. You pass x of n through the system, you will get y of n, and this y of n is shifted, then you will get y of n minus n naught. Otherwise, you first shift the input sequence x of n, you will get x of n minus n naught, and then pass it through the system, you will get some output y2 of n. Now these two outputs y1 of n and y2 of n are same, are equal. In that case the system is time invariant. But if the value of y1 of n and y2 of n are not equal, then that system is time variant. The systems which satisfy both linearity property and time invariance property, we call them as linear time invariant systems, or in short LTI systems. LTI systems are represented in time domain using linear constant coefficient difference equations. So you make use of the difference equations to represent the LTI systems. This is all a recap. We have already studied it in signals and systems. Now LTI systems are characterized or described using unit sample response or impulse response h of n. Convolution, it relates the input and output of the LTI system to its impulse response or unit sample response. So if impulse function is given as input to the system, we will get impulse response. So you are giving impulse as the input, you are getting impulse response h of n as the output of the system. Then to the same system you give x of n as the input, then the output y of n is given by convolution of x of n and h of n. What is this convolution? Linear convolution. It is defined as summation k equal to minus infinity to infinity x of k h of n minus k, or this can also be written as summation k equal to minus infinity to infinity h of k x of n minus k. Next, you had studied about Z transform. There is a relationship between Z transform and DTFT. We know that DTFT, that is x of e to the power of j omega, or in short x of omega, is given by summation n equal to minus infinity to infinity x of n e to the power of minus j omega n. X of n is n point finite duration sequence. Then in that case we take n is equal to 0 to n minus 1 instead of n is equal to minus infinity to infinity. Here we substitute e to the power of j omega as z. Then we will get summation x of n z to the power of minus n, and that is the formula of Z transform. We are going to get x of z is equal to summation n is equal to 0 to n minus 1 x of n z to the power of minus n. Another thing we studied is linear convolution in the time domain. When you apply the Z transform, you will get product of the Z transforms of the individual signals. So x of n and h of n are convoluted. Then after application of the Z transform, you will get x of z into h of z. So h of z is the transfer function of the system function, and h of n we already know it is the impulse response. So y of z is equal to x of z into h of z, or h of z we get it as y of z by x of z, and apply inverse Z transform on h of z, you will get the impulse response h of n. H of n, it characterizes the linear time invariant systems in the time domain. H of z characterizes the linear time invariant system in the frequency domain. It contains complex function of z. It can be obtained by specifying the poles and zeros of the system. And what are the poles? Poles are the roots of the denominator, and zeros are the roots of the numerator of the transfer function. What are digital filters? Same thing, like you have the system, you're passing the input x of n, you're getting y of n, which is x of n convolution h of n. So this is nothing but the filtered output. And we already know that LTI systems are described by linear constant coefficient difference equations, and this is the general form of the difference equation, that is y of n is equal to minus summation a y of n minus k plus summation b x of n minus k. So for example, I have y of n plus a1 y of n minus 1 plus a2 y of n minus 2 is equal to b0 x of n plus b1 x of n minus 1. This is an example of difference equation representing the linear time invariant system. When we apply the Z transform on this, we will get y of z plus a1 z inverse y of z, because it is y of n minus 1, plus a2, this will be z to the power of minus 2 y of z, equal to b0 x of z plus b1 z inverse x of z. So I take y of z common here, this side I take x of z common, and finally I'll get h of z is equal to y of z by x of z as b0 plus b1 z inverse by 1 plus a1 z inverse plus a2 z inverse. This is the transfer function for this particular difference equation. Here in this case, we have b0 plus b1 z inverse is the numerator function, and denominator we have 1 plus a1 z inverse plus a2 z to the power of minus 2. You factorize the numerator, get the value of z, that will give us zeros of the system, and the denominator polynomial you take, you factorize and get the values of z, that will give us the poles of the system. So in general, the value of h of z is given as y of z by x of z is equal to summation bkz to the power of minus k by 1 plus summation akz to the power of minus k. From this particular definition, you have two types of filters. One we call them as FIR filters, another is the IIR filters, finite impulse response and infinite impulse response filters. If you have both the numerator as well as the denominator, then that is IIR filter. But FIR filter, you do not have y of n minus 1, n minus 2, etc. terms. So FIR filter, the function will be, or difference equation will be, y of n is equal to summation bkx of n minus k. There is no feedback of the output. There is no feedback in FIR. In IIR, feedback is there. That's why that y of n minus 1, n minus 2, etc. terms are present. You had studied step function, you had studied impulse function, ramp function. What do you mean by step function? If it is a discrete signal, we represent the step function as u of n, and it is 1 for n greater than or equal to 0 and 0 for n less than 0. Next, what do you mean impulse function? That is delta of n. It is 1 for n equal to 0, and the impulse function is 0 for n not equal to 0. And what is ramp function? It is n for n greater than or equal to 0 and 0 for n less than 0. The step function, at every value of n you have samples whose amplitude is equal to 1, and if it is impulse function, only at n equal to 0 you have a sample whose amplitude is 1. For all other values of n, the samples are 0. Whereas if it is a ramp function, at n equal to 0 the sample is 0, at n is equal to 1 the sample is 1, n is equal to 2 the sample is 2. Next, I hope you remember the amplitude scaling, time shifting in signals and systems. So for example, if I have u of n minus 2, what does this mean? This particular step function has been shifted by 2 units towards right. That means at n is equal to 2 I have the first sample, n is equal to 3, n is equal to 4, etc. n is equal to 1 and n is equal to 0 and all the other values of n, the samples are 0. Similarly, if I have u of n plus 2, what does this mean? This means that the step function has been shifted to the left by 2 units. That means now from n is equal to greater than or equal to minus 2, the amplitude of the samples is 1. And for n less than minus 2, it is 0. So this is about the time shifting. Similarly, if you have forgotten any concepts which you had studied in signals and systems, you have to go through. Okay, so we will start the syllabus of digital signal processing from the next lecture. I hope you have understood the contents of this lecture. Thank you and have a good day.